It is the morning after a wild conference championship Sunday in the NFL. I'm your host, Jarrett Smith, episode 20 of the morning after. Appreciate you, TMA crew, joining me today. Should be a really fun one. Obviously, again, as we kind of push towards the end of the NFL season, not as many game recaps, not as much, readjusting of numbers and power ratings and all that stuff. The shows are going to kind of branch out into what I thought it was going to be when I first started this, right? And we'll get to the Super Bowl. We'll get to Rams, Patriots, and what we saw on Championship Sunday. We'll do all that stuff as we normally do. But as I introduce the show, it does kind of feel like this Sunday is the first Sunday of the second chapter of this show, right? When we started this thing back in October, I was very much focused on the NFL season. Everything was recapping what we saw in the NFL on Sunday and then spinning it forward the following week and going through all of our numbers and adjusting the power ratings and looking at look-ahead lines, and very much in the process of what I do during a football regular season on a Sunday night heading into a Monday morning, which is when a lot of action takes place. Now it's going to change, right? Because we have one game left. It's not happening for 2 more weeks. And I'm not going to be as heavy with that type of work in the offseason. Why? I don't make ratings for basketball. I don't make ratings for hockey. Baseball, it's just, the volume is so heavy. It's not that type of sport betting wise. It's just, you kind of just wake up every morning, you check the lines, and you go from there. There's not a lot of overnights that take place, in the baseball markets, unless you're hammering money lines, which I really don't. So this show's going to change. I don't know what it's going to become. When I started this show, I explained it, and I'll explain it again. I wanted a platform where I can voice my opinions on sports and go through my process and react to things, because I think that's a strength of mine. Football season, there's 2 seasons in my universe. There's football season and non-football season. Well, we're about to enter the second phase of it. And so my routine will change dramatically. Based on that routine and what I do on a weekly basis, that will dictate how this show goes. I'm going to give you at least one a week. I don't know if it's going to be every Sunday night after football season. Maybe we move it to a different day. Maybe we make it a Friday thing, right, where we spin ahead the weekend for basketball, college hoops, right, all the tourney games that are going to take place. I don't know. Maybe we make it very topical, where I only come on when I feel inspired to say something, like a story break, something big happens, and we get on that night, and then we do the morning after, some kind of big breaking news story. I don't know. I don't know. We're going to take it 1 week at a time. We still obviously have one more football game to handicap. We still are going to kind of go through our process as we recap what took place Conference Championship Sunday. But the times, they are changing here on the morning after. 20 episodes in. Listen, 20 weeks. That's 5 months worth of episodes. One a week pretty much for the last 5 months. I love this. I do. I get a lot of feedback on TikTok more than any other app. YouTube, the growth has been relatively slow. TikTok, I get a ton of engagement on the videos. Man, people did not like my Brandon Cooks "was it a catch or not" take last week. I got absolutely roasted for that. A week later, I still have no idea if it was a catch or not. Everyone in the world seems to have 100% opinion that it was, but some people that I talk to who are not Joe Public and Jane Public were a little bit more unsure. But I think there's certainly a lot of upside to this. I love talking through things. I'm a yapper. That's what I do. And this has been a great outlet for me. So I don't know what it's going to look like in the next few months, right, as we kind of get into this spring-summer mode. But it's going to look like something. We're just going to take it 1 week at a time, and we're going to have a whole lot of fun. All right, let's talk about Conference Championship Sunday, because it was a whole lot of fun. Actually, I take it back. Half of it was fun. The other half of it was kind of just skating by, kind of just getting by. So we'll start there. Patriots, Broncos, not a very sexy scoreline. 10-7 the final. New England it closed 3.5. I mean, we gave out 5 very early in the week. I think on the BetUS show on Thursday, it was 4.5. I think it closed 3.5. Maybe it pushed back to 4, but Denver covered all numbers. It never got to 3 and definitely didn't get through 3. So Denver losing by 3 was a favorable result for the book, right? Not only the Patriots win, no cover. Typically, when a favorite wins and doesn't cover, especially a public favorite like New England was, that's good for the book because you typically get a lot of spread money on the favorite and you get some money line money on the dog. So when it threads that needle, it doesn't happen often in the NFL, right? They say about, based on what I saw the numbers a couple years ago, it might have changed, but about 70 to 75% of the time, might even be higher, might be closer to 80% of the time, when the team who wins typically covers in the NFL. Not in this scenario, not in this game. The team that won did not cover, and the game stayed way under the total. That was the other thing that the books loved. Anytime there's not a lot of touchdowns in a game, right? Everyone's betting overs and props. Everyone's betting touchdowns. When you don't get a lot of touchdowns in the game, always a good day for the book. So bookmakers getting smiled on with that result. The box score was so ugly. The conditions played a huge factor in the game. I thought Jarrett Stidham played okay. I mean, obviously he made the one big mistake, and that mistake clearly cost New England the game, but it was kind of a fluky play. He just had a bit of a brain fart, which when you're not, going through the motions as a starting quarterback every week, and then the game speeds up like that, you can make that, oh my God, no type of play where if he just goes down or, throws the ball into the stands before scrambling and doesn't take the sack and doesn't get stripped, it's a very different scenario. But I basically nothing happened in the second half of the game because of the conditions. The conditions were, you don't see conditions play that big of a factor in an NFL game very often. But the fact that the first half was pretty much dry and then the second half was like Hoth, it was like a freaking blizzard for any Episode 5 Star Wars fans. Empire Strikes Back vibes there with Hoth. I don't know. I think Stidham. I think if that game's played out 100 times, I think Denver covers more than they don't. Stidham was okay. He handled his business as best you could hope for, considering the circumstances. I mean, he hadn't started a game. I think it was the first time ever where a quarterback started a conference championship game without taking one snap or attempting one pass during the regular season. Like, it was just a very bizarre scenario. But he made some nice throws. He had the big deep throw to Mims in the first quarter, made a couple of other nice throws in the first half. And then once the conditions got crazy, nobody moved the ball. It was just basically Drake May's legs that really were the only positive offense for New England in the second half of that game. I thought the biggest play, the turning point in the game, was the decision by Sean Payton early in the second quarter. So Denver's up 7-0. Early second quarter, you go for it on 4th and 1. Instead of kicking a 31-yard field goal to go up by 2 scores. This actually, when you go back and look at the 4th down conversion, metrics, analytics, they always say go for it. But in this case, it was actually a 2% higher win probability kicking the field goal. So Denver gave up 2% of win probability by going for it there. But also, when you're dealing with a backup quarterback and the defense is playing really well, going up 2 scores also has a psychological impact. So I thought that was a very bad decision. You credit Tony Romo, who was brutal in the booth on Sunday, but he got that one right. He absolutely should have, Sean Payton should have absolutely kicked the field goal in that scenario and gone up 10-0. Obviously, the other big play was the Stidham fumble. That happened on the ensuing Broncos drive. So Denver, the first 20 minutes of the game was just dominating. Especially defensively. And then the turning point was the, going forward on 4th down, not converting. And then on the next drive, Denver gives up the strip sack, and then New England's in the end zone a few plays later, and all of a sudden we're tied at half. I thought Stidham made a few nice throws. We did a film study early in the week showcasing some of his throws from the preseason. One of them was the exact same throw he made to Mims. It was just this perfectly, arced, timed go ball deep down the field, and it was just a beautiful ball. He did that in the preseason. He had multiple games in the preseason where he was showcasing his accuracy and his ability to push the ball down the field. He can make the throws, but when the game sped up, New England blitzed the heck out of him, 40% blitz rate in the game. Actually, let me check. I was looking at some of the blitz rates earlier in the day for some of these other games. It was a very aggressive game plan by New England. So they blitzed in this game. They played a lot of They played a lot more man coverage. Obviously, when you blitz, heavy man coverage. They played about 40% man, which is about 15% above the NFL average, and they blitzed at over 40%, which is 14% above the NFL average. So the last 2 weeks, right, they blitzed the heck out of C.J. Stroud, and they blitzed the heck out of Jarrett Stidham. They just sped up his clock, and he made a few bumble plays. Like, he made one boneheaded play, and then a few other plays right where he just looked flustered. And that's going to happen. I think New England made the right decision to speed him up because when you're not getting game reps against ones consistently, and then all of a sudden you're doing it in an AFC Championship game, like, it's just, you would imagine there's going to be some jitters. He had a little early jitters, a little early nerves that he shook off, and then he made a few nice throws. And then once the conditions deteriorated in the second half, just really tough for anything, either team really, to move the ball. So you credit the Patriots, they hold on. And that's really the next part of this. Everyone, and rightfully so, is going to give the NFC the nod in the Super Bowl. I mean, I tweeted out, trying to get a little clickbait. The biggest thing I learned about the Patriots-Broncos first half was that the winner of the NFC Championship game is going to win the Super Bowl, likely. I still feel that way, and Seattle opened a favorite in the game. But the narrative about New England's soft schedule is kind of a thing of the past now. Over the last 3 games, they have defeated and scored more points with a plus 28 turnover margin against 3 of the top 8 defenses in the NFL. Chargers, Texans, Broncos. Denver, of course, being on the road in bad weather. So again, those are 3 of the top 8 defenses in the NFL in terms of points allowed. And they had a plus 28 scoring margin against those 3 teams. So you want to say that New England got fortunate with kind of the path that they took. You have to give these teams credit for winning games, man. Like, I know it's not going to look sexy. The power ratings are not going to give them any credit for it. But the game isn't played on paper, and power ratings are created with numbers and in a lab on paper. And the game's not played on paper. And at some point, you have to give credit, just like the Bears. You have to give credit to the Patriots for winning these games and getting to this point. And they are, I don't want to say a worthy contender, because again, market-wise, they're going to be a pretty heavy underdog in the game. But they are definitely worthy in the AFC, because there wasn't a team in the AFC that really stepped up this year and made their claim to be the best team. And New England, the one thing they did consistently all year, just like Denver, and frankly, I don't know if Denver would have won this game with Bo Nix. I don't. You want to say that Nix wouldn't have made that big mistake? Maybe, but he also might not have made that deep pass down the field, which was Denver's only touchdown, because that's not Bo Nix's strength. So you could make the case that Nix might not have given up the goofball touchdown that Stidham did, but he also might not have gotten them into the end zone on that long pass. Maybe he gets them in the end zone in a different way. Obviously, that is the fallacy of the predetermined outcome. But my point being, I'm not putting all of this on Jarrett Stidham. I think you've got to give credit to New England for making plays in big spots. And that's where I'm at with this game. Doesn't do him any good in the power ratings. It's not going to give him any better of a chance to beat Seattle next week, who looks like a freaking, or in 2 weeks, who looks like a juggernaut. But I do tip my cap to New England, and I'm not going to knock them for the soft schedule. I'm going to respect them for winning these games, because it is not easy to win in the NFL. The problem, though, Drake May's taken 15 sacks in 3 playoff games. That is a glaring weakness that I'm sure Seattle is going to take advantage of, because their defense is, I think it's the best in the NFL. You want to say Houston's is, it's fine, but I would put Seattle right there with any defense in the league, and I think Mike McDonald is a freaking gem. All right, so that gets us to the NFC Championship game. The Rams actually won the box score pretty convincingly. And maybe you'd be surprised about that. 8.3 to 6.1 in yards per play. Seattle had more penalties. They took more sacks. Both teams, settled once in the red zone. The difference was the Rams were 1 for 8 on third downs. Seattle was 7 for 13. And, of course, special teams, right? The Rams made that one mistake on special teams, the muffed punt. And that's been the story of the year for the Rams. They're 25th in special teams DVOA, Seattle second. That was actually the biggest edge in the game, was Seattle had one of the best special teams units in the NFL, and the Rams had one of the worst. So you want to overlook special teams? I get it. That's fair. It doesn't play an impact in every game, but when it does play an impact, it's impactful, because it was really the difference here, right? If that muffed punt doesn't happen, I think the Rams win this game. The irony is, in the first 2 games between these teams, the Rams were +3 turnover margin in both games. +6 in the combined in the first 2 games, but in this game they were a -1. And that, again, I think was the difference. I thought Matthew Stafford and Sam Darnold were both marvelous. Neither quarterback made any losing plays. Stafford simply ran out of time on that last drive. I think if they have another minute, or if he has a timeout in his back pocket, right, he might put them in a position to score the game-winning touchdown. But they just ran out of time. Like the clock, just like the management of the clock late, and kind of the way that the mechanics of the clock, played out over the final 2 minutes. The Rams defense could not get off the field on that last drive. You give the Seahawks a ton of credit. Big time tip of the cap to Sam Darnold. How about Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, putting the ball in Darnold's hands on that last drive, throwing it, even though the smart money, the conservative move would have just been run, bleed the clock. They put the ball in Darnold's hands, and that penalty, I believe it was a play action, that really set up the final kill for Seattle to really milk the clock down to make it almost impossible for the Rams to come back. But that was off Darnold. That was all Darnold. And he was magnificent in this game. The narrative all week was he's going to screw it up in the big moment, and he didn't. So you've got to just shut your mouth, tip your cap, and say Seattle is the best team in the league this year. I mean, obviously the power ratings are going to prove that. They were number 1 in the power ratings coming into this week, and they are the best team in the NFL. They are a big favorite in the Super Bowl. The line opened 4-ish. I saw 3.5. I saw 4, and then we saw money on Seattle right away. I'm seeing 4.5, 5s now as I record this on Sunday night. I think there's some storylines that we can get to, but I think the biggest one is the NFC being far and away the greater conference this year. This was the Super Bowl tonight in the NFC between Seattle and the Rams. Like, that was an awesome game. Back and forth. Both teams felt like they were going to win it at different points in the second half. Just an awesome game with 2 elite teams, 2 elite quarterbacks. Darnold has really turned his career around, man. It really impressive. I mean, he's going from seeing ghosts against the Patriots in 2018 to now, or maybe it was 2019. I forget the ghost year, whenever that happened, to now facing the Patriots in the Super Bowl. I mean, it really is one of the most remarkable turnarounds in NFL history. Of course, this is a rematch of Super Bowl 49. Pats won that game 28-24. It was the Malcolm Butler game, right? Seattle was trailing late, driving down for the winning score, and Pete Carroll decides to throw it. I think it was on first down. And Malcolm Butler made the interception, and that was the game, even though Marshawn Lynch was dominating that game on the ground. Goal to go inside the 5. Pete Carroll decides to throw it, and Russell Wilson throws the pick. And the rest is history. It was the 4th ring and 3rd Super Bowl MVP for Tom Brady. He had 4 touchdowns in the game. I remember this game. So I was an intern. This was 2015 Super Bowl. So this was January. I guess maybe it was the first week of February, last week of January of 2015. At the time, I was living in New York City. I just moved to New York City back from, I was a news reporter in Michigan, sports reporter, news reporter in Michigan. Then at the end of 2014, I moved back to New York. I took a job at SNY as an editor behind the scenes. I was editing Geico Sports Night this night, the Super Bowl night. Cutting the highlights of this game in the edit bay, watching this game. And I had a whopper of a bet on New England -3.5. Massive wager. I thought I was dead and buried. I thought I was cooked. First of all, New England I think they were behind in the game for most of the game, and then they came back late. And then Seattle drove it right back down the field, and then they had a chance, obviously, to put the dagger in when Butler made the interception. I remember sitting in the edit bay at the time, SNY Studios. They moved downtown, but at the time they were still in Midtown. I remember sitting in the edit bay with my associate producer at the time, Steve Cucci, shout out. And I was watching I was like, I'm cooked, man. I got a huge bet on New England. I'm absolutely cooked. And then he makes the interception. I'm like, he made the interception. It was, again, I was young. I was 30 years old. I just moved to New York. I'm working at SNY. I got a whopper of a bet on the Super Bowl, watching it with my new colleagues. Like it was one of those, memorable nights for me in my career. So it'll be a rematch of that game. I think it's funny, by the way. I think it's funny. All year long, NFL fans are like, we don't want the Chiefs in the playoffs anymore. We want a new, fresh matchup in the Super Bowl. You get a rematch of 10 years ago. It's just, I think it's very funny. And even if the Rams would have won, we would have had 2 rematches, right? They played twice. That was the first game in the early 2000s, the Kurt Warner game. against Brady. And then, of course, the more recent one with Jared Goff for the Rams. So it's just, I think it's funny how we've been clamoring for fresh meat in the Super Bowl grinder all year, and we get a rematch. So that's always fun. Again, the Darnold turnaround to me, and Drake May, I think he's the youngest quarterback or one of the youngest quarterbacks ever to start a Super Bowl. The quarterback matchup here, I can't wait to break it down. Obviously, I'm going to be doing a lot more deep diving into props and angles over the next couple weeks. I'm just reacting to what I see now. I don't have any bets to make on the game. I don't even have anything for you guys actionable. I mean, honestly, I'm just so worn out from the last few weeks of football, and I think I would lean Seattle in the game, and maybe that would be what I'd give you. But I think we just kind of wait this one out this week, wait for the props to drop, wait for me to do some research, and then on next week's show, next Sunday night, I don't know, maybe we won't even do it Sunday night. Whenever I have something to report, I will get on the horn and we'll do another episode before the Super Bowl, right? And then we'll do our next episode on Super Bowl Sunday, right after the game. But before the Super Bowl, obviously, next Sunday, I will give you guys a full preview show with like all my picks and my angles and everything. Whenever I have everything finalized, maybe it's next weekend, maybe it's Monday, Tuesday of the game week. I don't know. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it, and I will give you guys a full breakdown, all my picks, all my angles, all my narratives, everything. It'll be a full plethora, smorgasbord, buffet of Super Bowl bets. Last year I did 59 of them for Super Bowl 59. I don't know if I'm going to do 60 again this year. I don't know. It seems like a lot of bets, but maybe I'll get there. maybe I'll get there. If I do, obviously we'll inform all of you as we move forward into what is the last game of the NFL season. Time flies when you're having fun. The 2025 season, one more game, 4 more quarters, New England and Seattle for all the marbles. I would be surprised if the Seahawks did not win this game. I would be very, very surprised. They are clearly the best team in the NFL this year. If you want what my ratings were, I did give Seattle a slight boost for this game, even though they didn't win the box score. They covered, so I've got to give them a boost. And I did not increase New England because they did not cover. And frankly, they didn't really play that well. They gained 3.2 yards per play. The conditions obviously were a factor, but Drake May took 5 sacks. If it wasn't for that fumble, they probably don't win. It just was a really fluky game. But when you win the turnover margin 2-0, you're going to win a lot of football games in the NFL, especially in the postseason. So I make this game 4. I have Seattle as my highest-rated team in the NFL. I have New England as my second highest-rated team, tied with the Rams. But I have a 4-point margin between these two teams in my ratings. So I make it Seattle -4. So I feel like I made a pretty good number, right? Line open 4. And now we're getting that Seattle money. I would not expect it to get to 7. I think it'll probably hit 6, maybe 6.5. I would be surprised if it got to 7. But I think 4.5 is probably a good closing number. I think Seattle deserves to be a solid favorite here, but I think 7's probably pushing it. I think it should be a one score cushion. All right, that's kind of it for today's show. I'm going to get into a couple. Actually, no, I want to get into one college football topic. So, right, our last show, this is our first show after the college football season. So congrats to Indiana. On winning the national championship last Monday, right? On last Sunday night show, we gave you the first quarter under, easy cash there. I gave you Miami plus 8.5, nice cash there, even though it closed 7.5, didn't matter. They still only lost by a very small margin, and frankly, they had a chance to win that game. And then the cherry on top was the Carson Beck completions prop, which cashed on the last drive, and then he threw the pick on the next play. So it was a great night for me, college football betting wise. 3-0 sweep to close college football season. Indiana, obviously a worthy champion. Were they the dominant champion that they were priced as? No. I think they were just the best team in college football this year. But Miami's a worthy adversary. They've got first-rounders all over the offensive and defensive line, and Carson Beck's a very experienced quarterback who was not overwhelmed by the moment. So I think that was obviously a very positive outcome for me, but I thought Miami could have won that game. I really do. But I'm glad Indiana won it because we had the Indiana future as well, which cashed. So we thread the needle perfectly in that game. We got the Miami cover. We got the Indiana future home. And I finish bowl season up almost 10 units. I've been awesome in the bowls over the last 5 years. I've tweeted out every pick. I've got threads for every pick, and just an amazing run for me in the bowls. I appreciate all the positive comments I've gotten from social media about it, and it's been a fun run. I love capping the bowls, man. I think college football bowl season is my favorite time of the year. It's my busiest time of the year. That sprint from Thanksgiving till now, that 2-month sprint from Thanksgiving until now is really tough. I probably gained about 5 or 10 pounds. I haven't worked out as hard. I've been really tired. I haven't slept as well. When you don't sleep as well, you're not burning as much fat. I'm very in tune to those things in my body. I need a rest. I need a recharge. I actually I had a very low moment on social media this week. Like, I'm just kind of getting sick and tired of all the negativity out there. And it's not necessarily directed at me, just like in general. It's just like such a negative place. We're just so programmed by the rage bait out there that I want to just take a step back from everything, from content, from life, I just want to kind of just chill and rest and recharge. So obviously we're going to push through the Super Bowl. But then once I get past the Super Bowl, man, these last 2 months with Thanksgiving and then bowl season and then the NFL playoffs, this is a grind, man. Putting yourself out there every single day for the world to see. When you win, you don't hear it as much as when you lose. When you're saying things that people disagree with, it's much louder than when you're saying things that people agree with and when you're doing quality work. Usually the quality work is kind of quiet. It's unnoticed. It's like an offensive lineman. You only hear their name called when there's a penalty. If you don't hear their name called during the game by the announcers, that means they're doing a good job. That can get exhausting, though, because you're putting yourself out there every day and you're just not getting that gratification. Now, part of that is maybe I shouldn't need the gratification, right? Maybe I should just be confident in what I'm doing and not need the social media response. But then there's the other side of it is that's how you get noticed in our industry is you put your content out there, people see it, they like it, and then they bring you on their show, you get more opportunities, you network, you kind of put yourself out there. That's what it's called. So when you're not getting that, positive reinforcement, it can be frustrating sometimes. So I had a bit of a weak moment this week on social media where I was a little bit mopey. We move forward. I think I appreciate everyone who reached out this week. I was actually floored with how many people reached out to me. You don't really know. You really don't. That's the one thing I've learned doing what I do for 20 plus years. You really don't know who's actually listening because not as many people respond who are actually listening. And sometimes when you kind of be vulnerable, which that's what it was a vulnerable moment for me. You're surprised at how many people actually give a fuck. So I appreciate everyone who reached out this week. It meant a lot. I love what I do. I truly feel grateful for what I do. I posted a picture on Saturday night, or maybe I think it was Sunday morning. It was Saturday night. I posted a picture from 2018 of me reporting in Queens during a blizzard for New York One, because obviously I hope the part of our country that is impacted by the winter storm this week is everyone's safe. I know there's a lot of power outages, but back in my news reporting days, I would be out there in this urging people to stay inside. Like, here I am outside in a blizzard telling you to stay inside. I don't miss that part of being a news reporter. But I posted that clip on Saturday night, or a picture of that on Saturday night. And then on Sunday morning, I did a fill-in shift on Fox for Greg Cosell. Usually I do a Saturday morning show. That's our Saturday, a regular show. But then Sunday morning, Greg Cosell, who was impacted by the weather this week, could not do his show. And so my boss, Scott Shapiro, asked me to fill in. And obviously I said, yes, awesome opportunity to do 2 hours of national radio on Championship Sunday. Shout out Mike Harmon as well, who was the co-host that day. He's one of my favorite people at Fox. Doing 2 hours with him was a breeze. But I remember, I quote tweeted that post from Saturday night, and I said, I'm very hard on myself. No one's harder on me than me. But if you go back and tell that kid in 2018 who's reporting out in a blizzard that in 2026 he'd be 50 pounds lighter, living in Vegas, and doing 2 hours of national radio on NFL Championship Sunday, I think he'd be pretty happy. So perspective matters. I'm very hard on myself. I am constantly thinking I'm not doing enough. I need to do more. That's just like the winner's mentality. A winner's mentality is 90% of the time you think you're losing. And that's how you stay sharp. That's how you stay locked in. Because if you're just fat and happy, I'm winning and, everything's going great, if that's your constant mindset, well, then you're going to get complacent. And then you're going to, start skipping steps and start cutting corners. And that's when your quality of your work is going to decrease. And then all of a sudden, things aren't going to be going as well. So the flip side of that is 90% of the time, I think I suck. And I'm like, hey, you got to do better. So there's this balance to it. And I've hit my wall, right? I feel myself hitting that wall. And it's important to trust your body. It's important to understand that when you feel yourself getting close to the breaking point of like, hey, I need a break, take a break. Trust your body, trust your mind. So I hit that wall this week, and I'm very excited for the NFL season to be over. And I'm going to be going to Florida the week after the Super Bowl, spending some time with my family. My mom turns, actually, I won't say her age, but it's her birthday this week, actually. And then I'll go down after the Super Bowl, and we'll celebrate together. And then I turn 40. I'm willing to admit my age. I turn 40 at the end of next month. So the next month for me is going to be a lot of shedding, a lot of resetting, and a lot of recharging as I get ready to close this chapter and start a new one in my 4th decade of life. Pretty wild. 4 decades. 4 decades. Been around the block, huh? I certainly can't call myself a young man anymore. I definitely am starting to get into the middle-age territory. So whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I feel like I'm in pretty damn good shape for a 40-year-old, almost 40-year-old man. But I can always do better. Speaking of that, tonight I'm actually 3 hours in right now, or about 2.5 hours into my 72-hour fast. It's easy right now. It'll be a lot harder at this time tomorrow, and then who knows where I'll be come Tuesday. But 72-hour fast starts tonight, Sunday through Wednesday. The reasons I'm doing it, outside of the obvious health reasons, I won't get into them in detail, but they are very plentiful. I encourage you to do your own research on the benefits of long-form fasting, autophagy, what it does to your mental clarity, all of those things. They're fantastic. The big reason I'm doing it is I want to challenge myself, and I want to prove to myself that I can do it. I've never gone longer than 24 hours before, but I think I can handle it. I think it is of the utmost importance for people in society today to have full control over everything they put in their mouth, the relationship of the things that they put in their mouth. I think that is vital. And I'm going to crush this fast, 72 hours. I'm probably going to hate it, and then I'm going to love it. Because I always feel good after doing hard things. Even though it's hard at the time, it teaches you discipline. It teaches you consistency. It teaches you to be intentional about everything you put in your body. And I think that is a very important aspect of society today that can be missed. And people are, I think, unconscious to it. And I think if they were more conscious about everything they put in their mouth, I think they would feel a lot better every day. And maybe some of that negativity that you see on social media every day would be not as much as you normally would see. But let's be honest, it's social media. You're always going to have negativity. All right, rise and wine. So this is a real life rise and wine today. What do I mean by that? I am doing this rise and wine through the lens of Dabo Swinney. What do I mean by that? So there is some serious tea getting sipped in the transfer portal between Pete Golding of Ole Miss and Dabo Swinney of Clemson. I don't know if you have stayed up to date with this Luke Forelli situation. Who is Luke Forelli? He is a former Cal linebacker, entered the transfer portal, committed to Clemson. The transfer portal closed last week. I think it was on the 16th or the 17th, one of those days. It was recently, over the last 10 days. And all of a sudden, Luke Forelli is going back in the transfer portal, and he is now going to Ole Miss. So what the hell happened? Well, Dabo Swinney came out and did a press conference. Dabo brought this was like my cousin Vinny. Like, he brought like a list of like the whole timeline of everything, and he went through it one by one like he was on the stand, like a witness. So Ole Miss was obviously tampering with this kid. Just transferred to Clemson, enrolled in class already. He was already enrolled in class, going to class, moved to Clemson. Ole Miss wanted Forelli to re-enter the transfer portal and come to Oxford. So here was the quote that Dabo said that Pete Golding texted to Luke Forelli, quote, "I know you're signed, but what's the buyout?" Golding also sent him a picture of $1 million contract. He also had Trinidad Chambliss and Jackson Dart calling him directly. I mean, he was throwing out all the stops. This is like when you take the girl out and you go for the not only fancy dinner, but you buy the fancy bottle of wine and you splurge for the limo. Like, I mean, they were throwing the kitchen sink at this kid. Then they upped the offer. Then they upped the offer to $2 million. So it was like this back and forth between the agent and Forelli and Clemson. Like, here's what they're doing. Clemson knew the whole time that they were tampering, but what can they do about it? And that's the problem. So the end result of this is Forelli informs Clemson that he's re-entering the transfer portal, and now he ends up at Ole Miss. And now Dabo's really pissed. Dabo called the AD, called the ACC commissioner, called the SEC commissioner. Like, they're trying to get everyone involved and make it a big deal. Here's the problem. What are the rules? I don't know what they are. Do you know what the rules are for this? What are the consequences? Is there even a tampering rule in college football with transfer portal stuff right now? I don't know what the rules are. I don't know what the repercussions are. What are the consequences of these rules? You get scholarships taken away? You can't go to a bowl game? Like, I think we have reached the point in this wild, wild west of NIL that we need some kind of structure. This is getting insane. The kid was enrolled at Clemson going to class, and Pete Golding's texting him like he's some kind of side piece on Tinder. It's truly wild where we're at right now. So I feel for you, Dabo. I just don't know what you can do. Like, it seems like you're fighting a losing battle at this point because there's really no rules or structure in place to prevent this from happening. And if there are rules or structure in place, I don't know what they are. And they're not being enforced very well if this was allowed to happen. So I hope that maybe this incident sparks some kind of reform. I think we need a commissioner of college sports or college football. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know how you appoint that person or if you vote them in. I have no idea. But this is insane. And what's to prevent every coach in the country, and I'm sure every coach is doing this to some degree, but this was a egregious tampering violation. I don't know how you stop this. I think at some point, college football needs it. Like, you're doing these kids a disservice because they're being treated like, professional athletes, and it's just it's a remarkable 180 from where we were a few years ago when all of this was happening very, a little more under the table. It was happening, quietly. Now it's loud in your face. Like, it's obnoxious. And I think we need to figure out a way to curtail it. And I think we need to appoint a commissioner of college sports. I'd be happy to run. But obviously, I know you guys would miss me here in the morning after. So that's the tea going around the college football ranks right now. I don't expect it to change anytime soon. We got the Senior Bowl coming up. We got a lot of draft stuff coming up. But once we get to spring ball, you're going to get a lot of the same shit. You're going to get a lot of the same shit. I heard from a couple people that the issues they're having is these kids, they're trying to transfer, go to other places. It doesn't work out. The money falls through, whatever. And then they try to go back to the original school and their spot's already been filled. So it's like this weird, it's the wild, wild west. There are no rules. Everyone's running around who has money is just throwing it at people. Like, here you go, here's your money. And they're being very loud and very obnoxious about it. So I think we need a commissioner of college sports. And I think this Pete Golding, Dabo Swinney drama maybe got us one step closer to it. Because Dabo ain't going to lay down quietly and let this happen. I mean, he was, beating his chest from the pulpit about this and calling everybody who would listen. So I think it's a unique scenario, but these are uncharted times for uncharted waters in unprecedented times. It's an absolute bizarre scenario right now in the college football recruiting scene. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of The Morning After. Again, the only actionable element I have for you right now is the Seahawks to win Super Bowl 60. Sure, lay the 4.5, but I have not made that bet yet. But I think Seattle is going to win the Super Bowl. I think the Seahawks are going to be the champs, and we will obviously give you a ton more actual, real, in-depth betting angles coming up on either next week's show or whenever I do that Super Bowl preview show. Another thing I'm going to start doing, and this likely will be a thing going forward, is periodic updates on the coaching carousel in the NFL. A lot of coordinators, a lot of head coaching vacancies have been filled. I'm not going to do anything yet because there's still a lot left to be determined. What I'm going to do is after all the dust has settled, I'm going to do write-ups on all the, basically I'll do a grid with all the new coaches like I do every offseason, and I'll do some write-ups and some rankings of the vacancies that were filled and what the impacts are going to be. And then once I get all that writing work done, then I will present that to you in podcast form, and it ain't going to change, right? Like once these guys sign, we're going to do probably a big NFL free agency, a recalibration of the coaches and the free agencies and the big signees before the draft. We'll do a big show before the draft that kind of sets the table for what we should see in the draft. And then we'll do probably some kind of other draft show that's focused a little bit more on bets that we're making for the actual draft itself. But I also want to do a separate, I might bring back Ron Ace, right? Ron Marmolevsky does a great job doing all the draft stuff. I might bring him back for some assessments to get an outside voice. But we're going to do 2 separate NFL draft shows. We're going to do one preview show that focuses on the personnel that's changed in the free agency and the coaching carousel, and then we'll focus on another NFL draft show that's just on the actual draft itself and the bets that are going to make and what teams I think are going to do this. But it's going to be kind of like 2 different shows, like one free agency show that'll include the coaches, and then one draft show that'll include the actual kids that are going to get drafted and what I expect to see there. So probably expect 2 different draft shows in the month of March. And a lot of March Madness content. Like that's going to be the vibe. I think we'll do one show, Super Bowl preview. We'll do one Super Bowl reaction show. Then I'll probably take a break for a week or 2, and then we'll pick things back up in March. First week of March, second week of March for some March Madness college basketball conference tournament stuff. And then as the tournament progresses, the March Madness obviously will decrease. And then once we get late March, early April, that's when we'll flip the switch and go into the draft, free agency, and all that good stuff as we get ready for the NFL offseason, which can ironically be just as busy as the regular season, but just in different ways. A lot more research heavy, a lot more in-depth writing, not as much like game recap ratings, adjustments, like just a little, it's just a different vibe. It's slower, I would say, the NFL offseason pace compared to the regular season, which is like, man, once you get that once each week is in the books, like you're already turning the page for next week and you're just plowing through, whereas the NFL offseason is a little bit of a slower pace. So we can digest a little bit more, absorb a little bit more, and hopefully get a good read on these teams as we head forward into the 2026 season. But still 1 game left to go. Seahawks, Rams. I will see you for episode 21 of The Morning After coming up soon as we preview Super Bowl 60. I appreciate you tuning in here on the show.